On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use, welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers in our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 20, created on September 14th, 2022. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me are Jeff in Minnesota and Neil out on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
So hello, I am having a Peabody Heights Astrodon Hazy IPA, the Astrodon being the official dinosaur of Maryland.
All righty. Well, I guess we're keeping a theme here. So I'm going with a barrel-aged Norwal. So
the official fish of Minnesota?
No, it's not, but it's a very tasty barrel-aged Imperial Stout.
I was not advised that there would be a theme, so I'm having a Bloody Mary, the official Bloody Mary of my belly. All right, you can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast, Green Bay Chat. And now the audio is available, just the audio is available on Spotify and Anchor. And you can find that using Green Bay Chat as your search. We also post all this stuff on our Twitter page. We've got a lot to talk about this week. Our topics include, of course, week one, the Packers and the Vikings, and we'll throw some of our other thoughts on week one around the league. We have a Packer player of the past, and it is Bears week, which will lead us to our Packer history report as well. As for week one, though, all three of us were, if you watched last week, all three of us were confident that the Packers would take a loss in week one, and we gleefully listed them as a loss in our confidence pool, yet none of us really put a lot of points on that loss. So just like last season, this is what happens really roughly when 30 players don't participate in preseason games, right? I guess we did see the loss coming, but Jeff, what did you see that you did like in this first game?
Well, what I saw, the first play of the game, he catches that ball. We might be having a different conversation right now. But I like the play call. I mean, get him involved. Other things that I did like across the game. We had more first downs, 21-19. We had a better third down efficiency. Wasn't fabulous, but it was better than the Vikings had. We only had 2 penalties. First game of the year, okay, 2 penalties. That was good. Nearly equal time of possession. Okay, so that positive. And 6.2 yards per rush. And it was only 18 attempts, but it was still over 100 yards of rushing. So those things are good.
Still a lot of positives that came out of it. I think the offensive line gelled relatively well, at least Josh Myers. I like how he handled the center of the line. He had a very strong game. And Neil, how about getting some good backup quarterback time in the end of the game there? Jordan Love, 4 for 5, technically, because the spike counted as an incomplete pass. But 4 for 5 there in the last 2 minutes of the game.
I'm going to go more globally that for the 4th preseason game, Aaron Rodgers played 3.5 quarters of the 4th preseason
yes,
game.
He did.
We got a lot of action. I mean, I think our guys can be ready for week one. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to now is that the Packers are going to be ready for week one. But yeah, I struggled to find positives. I also went with the first downs and the penalties as potential positives, and there wasn't really a lot to grasp other than that. I guess we can talk about Aaron Jones in particular, 5 rushes for 49 yards. And Matt LaFleur specifically stated that he regretted not giving Aaron Jones the ball more. And so I think that looking forward, we can see that we're going to have a lot more balance as far as pushing things in the running game and continuing to develop the receivers. I mean, I also like the fact that we did seem to be pushing the young receivers early, right? The fact that our leading receiver, as far as a wide receiver now, was only 37 yards, but it was still Romeo Doubs. And so DeGuara had a couple of receptions. Disappointed that Watkins and Cobb combined only added up to 32 receiving yards on 55 combined routes. But we are giving, it is clear that we're giving the young players, the young receivers, the chance. And I think that is going to pay dividends down the road.
Well, and you took away my question too. Well, not really, because you didn't quite answer it. And you've got the statistics there. Who was the leading receiver for the Packers for this game?
A.J. Dillon, 5 receptions, 46 yards. Yeah.
I wish they would have used Tunyon a little more because he seemed healthy. He did have one really nice catch, a little bit longer catch, but kind of just weren't getting the tight ends involved.
No clear number one receiver coming out of this game. visually, at least on first look. But what I do like is kind of how this harkens back to that Holmgren offense of spreading the ball around.
Yeah.
Everybody getting a chance. Everybody, I think, ran good routes. And you saw equal opportunity for all the receivers that were in there, as well as the 2 running backs. So to be able to say we have a lot of offensive weapons in this way, getting the tight ends more involved as well.
I think weapons might be an overstatement as far as what we have, at least as far as the receiving game is concerned. We've got a lot of clubs, and hopefully we'll figure out how to go clubbing a little bit better as the season goes along, and maybe somebody will show up and become a true number 1 receiver. But the routes are a big issue too, as far as that's concerned. And I think that when you look at concerns of the game, my number 1 concern is the fact that the Vikings basically use the Packers playoff approach, in that you rely on your front 4 and then rely on deep coverage. So the Vikings played 2 deep safeties on 35 of 39 passing attempts. They were in zone defense, 30 of 39 passing attempts, 14% blitz rate. If you've got good D-backs and especially good defensive line, that's something that's going to work. We know a lot of the teams in the NFL won't. Aaron Rodgers will hopefully feast on those teams, but that has been our bugaboo as far as the playoffs are concerned, and it was right there in week 1.
What I didn't understand, and what I was really looking for, especially down near the goal line, run some of those where you've got the receivers moving around, where you've got some motion, where there's a jet sweep, something that happens, not just the standard handoff. And that seemed like an opportunity lost, because those, I don't know, they're not trick plays, but kind of misdirection or just motion plays. Those have been successful. Hoping to see those, but didn't.
Well, conversely, though, on 4th and 1, I think I would have liked to have seen a jumbo package. If you're going to resign that you're going to run your running back, your power back right up the middle, let's tighten up that line and run a stronger 1-yard play. That's probably the one play that I would have liked to have seen differently.
The Vikings had a very good 1-yard play when they were down by the end zone, unfortunately.
Defensively, though, our rookie Quay Walker, maybe out of position a few times, but in position certainly a few times, laid the lumber down. And I think that's one of the big things they were looking for him, his speed and his big hit ability. Were you impressed with what he brought to the table?
He hits like a son of a bitch, and it was awesome. It was definitely It was definitely the highlight of the defense as far as I was concerned. There were definitely issues with our defense. We allowed 395 yards to the Vikings. Kirk Cousins passed for 277. Obviously, we know what happened with Jefferson. But there definitely were hints, especially from Walker, and I loved watching that. That was just a real highlight of the game.
Rashawn Gary had a little feast early, though, too. He had that sack early, but he kind of disappeared late in the game, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't put as much pressure on Kirk Cousins as the Vikings put on Aaron Rodgers. That in the end was a big factor as far as the game. And we talk about potential positives, right? I mean, you take the AJ Dillon run and the pass to Watson. Well, it's a very different game if that's the case. And so, yeah, I mean, there were a lot of areas where we definitely weren't going on all cylinders, but by the same token, we at least had chances, and it was not a blowout as it first appeared. I mean, the biggest problem is that, something we've seen in the past, and something that certainly was true as far as a number of games last year. Aaron Rodgers in the first quarter, 1 of 5. Yes, again, ignoring the Christian Watson pass, but even through 3 quarters, 13 of 20 for 1111 yards. 111 yards passing for Rodgers through 3 quarters is not going to get it done.
And he took a bunch of sacks and big hits too. That's why I was looking for, okay, don't let him stand back there. Give him some designed rollout plays. Get him moving around a little bit. Hand it off to Randall Cobb or somebody. You know what I mean? Just try something a little different. Get some motion. Get something moving. And they didn't. And Rodgers almost got killed back there at one point.
Well, it goes back to, why not a few more possession passes like, Watkins and Cobb, right? I mean, this is sort of why they exist, is for these, 5 to 10 yard passes, these possessions. And Randall Cobb had a really important first down reception. I'm surprised we didn't see more of those short passes that would have relieved the pressure on Rodgers as far as having to stay back there and wait.
Yeah, the quick hitters, that just wasn't, they were dinking and dunking. It reminded me of the Bears almost a little bit. I mean, he wasn't throwing downfield. He wasn't getting the time. But I mean, okay, fine, then throw it 5-6 yards every single time. But that didn't happen either.
So speaking of downfield, so Aaron Rodgers only had 5 throws that went greater than 15 yards, 1 of 5, 23 yards with the interception, although I don't really care about that interception.
Very Bears-like, right?
Yeah.
And how about the special teams? Our kicker, Mason Crosby, who did not perform all preseason, got an extra point in a kickoff. Didn't look terrible, no injury to note. But other than that, Amari Rodgers, that first punt return, 11 yards. Other than that, not much else. I think a lot of fair catches. You had pointed out, Jeff, you didn't really even have a chance to bring anything out.
Well, the question is he going to, or is he just taking too many fair catches? I don't know the answer to that, but it seemed like, at one point, I know it said, is he ever going to return a punt? And, he's standing out there, he's catching it. Yay. One other
for the asshats, that's an improvement. Let's be fair.
Like I said, the bar's pretty low, so it's good that there were no, they did have one penalty, and so anyway, but no major gaffes. One thing I wanted to I read today actually that Rodgers last year never fumbled the ball. And he said that in a press conference today, and obviously he fumbled in week 1 against the Vikings. So, is he going to go another year without fumbling? No. So it's unfortunate that he did, but he's not prone to doing that. So hopefully it won't happen again.
When he's hit as many times as he was, it was what, 4 sacks and 7 knockdowns or something like that.
Yeah,
when the numbers are that high,
crazy.
right? There's going to be problems.
All in all, on the game in week 1 as a whole, though, it's professional football and it's back and it's meaningful games. Yeah, it was a loss, but it's still a meaningful game. It's real football and we love it. The rest of the league got to play this week as well, taking a look around the league, maybe starting in the division. We know the Bears got a win. Lions did not. Neil, you saw something, though, you liked about Detroit this week. What was it?
So globally, I was very happy with how the NFC looked this week, in that essentially outside of Minnesota, Philadelphia, and Detroit, the NFC's kind of stunk, right? The Rams lost. The Tampa Bay Dallas game was not impressive for either team, particularly unimpressive for Dallas, but I didn't think either team looked particularly good. Arizona was awful. Obviously, San Francisco, we'll talk about that game, but the one game that was most intriguing was the Philadelphia Lions game, and it's partly because the Philadelphia Eagles did a lot of really good things in the offseason. A.J. Brown had a quick hitter right off the bat as far as demonstrating what they could accomplish, and they scored a lot of points, but Detroit kept with them. Detroit kept with them. It was a 38-35 game. We knew that they were going to have some level of defense, but they also showed that they had some offensive chops as well. One of the things that I was reading about is that the Detroit general manager was really looking in the draft this year for people who could contribute right away. And his analysis is that they absolutely got that from their players that played in the week 1 game. And so the fact that Detroit is particularly is frisky on both offense and on defense is something that I think we need to worry about. We talked about, the game in Detroit being a potential loss, but I think that they could be a team that, if they get things coming together a little bit sooner than they anticipated, could do a little bit of damage.
So are we damaged playoff team?
We'll find out about playoffs.
They could be a spoiler. They could pick up a win or 2 here or there.
I mean,
or 6.
I think
I gotta look back at my notes. Yeah, 6. Detroit can win 6 games this year.
I think they're going to do better than 6. The other thing, though, related to that, is that Philadelphia also looked like an excellent team, other than having Jalen Hurts at quarterback. And I think that they really put even ignoring the Dak Prescott injury, considering the Dallas game before Dak was injured, Philadelphia established themselves as the best team in the NFC least. And a team that absolutely is one that we're going to have to worry about as far as moving down the line, both as far as when we play them, but also thinking about teams that could be bad matchups for us in the playoffs.
Well, speaking of that, because we are going to play all of them, the Giants kind of surprised. So all of a sudden they have a running game. We're going to be playing them in London. So is that for me kind of went, oh, well, maybe this isn't going to be a cakewalk in London. Maybe they're going to show up and play.
Daniel Jones looked good. And, the new Giants head coach shows that he's definitely willing to take a risk in the right situation. So that's definitely a wild card as far as the game in London is concerned. And, at the fundamental level, that's a road game, right? I mean, yes, it's technically a home game, but the players have to travel. They're going to be out of their usual rhythms. And that does potentially cause problems or potential problems. But by the same token, this is week one. Everyone overreacts to week one, and the Giants could go back to stinking after we see the week 2 game. So we'll have to see after we get a few more games under the into the season before we think too highly of any of these teams.
Yeah, well, Chicago got half their win total this week, so they're doing all right. They're going to live off of that one for a little bit. One of the teams, though, Jeff, that we're probably going to talk about a lot this season, Thursday night, Buffalo came out strong to open the season, and they looked really good on the road against the Rams. Formidable team, and the team that I think that we all agreed is going to be in that Super Bowl talk as well.
Yeah, they were one of the only teams that actually looked good, that kind of lived up to the hype. The other, of course, being Kansas City. They had no problems at all, which was pretty surprising. I mean, obviously the Rams, us, a lot of Super Bowl favorites, even Tampa, like you said, Dallas was horrible. I mean, so Sunday night I felt a little bit better about the Packer loss. I was like, wow, at least we didn't look like this. And we didn't have any significant injuries to starters anyway. So, okay, again, that's another thing I liked. I guess we didn't really have any significant injuries, but it was a weird week. Still kind of that, again, we talked about this, right? It's essentially the 4th preseason game. Not a lot of starters for these favored teams played in the preseason. We saw it, and there was a couple that surprised, though. Obviously, like you said, Buffalo, Kansas City, really sharp, really on. Everybody else, not so much.
I think you can put San Diego in that grouping as well. I think San Diego's established themselves as able to keep up with Kansas City. And I mean, Kansas City had question marks because of their receiving core as well. And Patrick Mahomes basically said, I don't care, I'm Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
we're going to do what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And those two teams will be facing off Thursday night.
Tomorrow night,
Chiefs Chargers. Yep. Neil, did you say San Diego?
I did.
Oh yeah, he did it. I agreed.
Well, do not edit that out.
The Powder Blues.
They will always be San Diego. I don't recognize the Los Angeles Chargers.
I've been doing it as well. You said it, and it didn't even register. And I was
exactly. Like, oh yeah.
Neil, what should we get a little bet going on here? Is there an over/under on whether Mike McCarthy will be the Dallas head coach when the Cowboys come to Green Bay in November?
I specifically watched that game and thought, geez, there's my whole bet on the Packers against Dallas was that it's going to be the Mike McCarthy Bowl. But the good news, I guess, is that Jerry Jones has decided that his reputation for hasty decisions is not something that serves him well. And it would take a fairly extreme situation for Jerry Jones to fire Mike McCarthy, I think, just because of who he is. He does have a built-in head coach in Dan Quinn. And so he definitely has somebody who can take care of the job. Whether he should keep Mike McCarthy is a separate question, but I think that the odds are still in favor of Mike McCarthy coming to Lambeau.
But what I think is that the Dak injury kind of bails out McCarthy, right? Okay, so our starting quarterback's gone for 6 weeks or so. So had that not happened and they still really sucked the first 3-4 games, it might be different. I think the injury bails them out because now the expectation is low. I mean, if they can win, if they can go 500 while Dak is out, that'll be a huge moral victory for them.
But if they're 0-6, do they fire Mike? I think the answer is yes then.
And then wrapping up the week, Monday night, Denver Broncos went to Seattle. So Denver Broncos signing Russell Wilson in the offseason, and then they head to Seattle, and Seattle with those uniforms, the fans, the fair weather 12th man show up as well, but just a lot of anomalies in that game. The Broncos
Geno Smith looked good, right? I mean, I think that's the biggest anomaly, right?
Yeah.
Right. And a couple of fumbles within the 5-yard line heading into the end zone. And then a third trip only getting the field goal, but big credit probably to Seattle's defense in that entire game. that was probably the surprise all the way through. And it was what, 17-13, I think, at halftime, and only a field goal in the second half. A very strong effort on that defense. But yeah, you're right, Neil. Gino, boy, he played like a first round draft pick, huh? Finally. And Russell Wilson played like an aging third round draft pick.
I didn't, but Russ didn't look so bad. I didn't think his support was really so great. I think there were a lot of things that went wrong for Denver that do not discourage me as far as the potential of the Broncos this year. It's more that I think that Seattle's potential is higher than I would have thought, or than we thought when we talked about the season last week.
Yeah, I think fundamentally both teams were solid. I mean, it was a frisky game to watch. I mean, it was very entertaining, but it was just like, is this really happening? It was so odd. And, there were some significant injuries in that game though, too. So the starting running back for Seattle is done for the year.
Do running backs matter anymore?
Well, I don't know. I guess they're going to find out. But
when you have two good ones, they do. Yeah. Hey, one last thing on injuries, going back to Green Bay. It sounds like Quay Walker has a chance of playing already this Sunday. His injury, they're counting him that he could be around. Chris Barnes is placed on IR, but could return later in the season. They brought up Caleb Jones, an offensive lineman listed at, 6'9", 370 pounds, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see if he works his way into the game. I assume he'll be inactive this week, but it's a big kid. That's a lot of meat up on that front line. It's more than just being a big body. He may be a mountain, but if he's a movable mountain, it's not that advantageous. So we'll have to see how young Caleb develops on his career, but looks like the outlook is pretty good for our injuries, at least getting through the first week.
And Lazard is back. He's been practicing. So we'll have our number one receiver back.
All right. We have no other inside information on injuries, but it is Bears week coming up. We are going to be celebrating the big rivalry that is the Packers and the Bears. But before we get into all of that, Neil, we kind of let the cat out of the bag. You've got the picture up throughout the whole podcast so far. That's all right, though. Who is our Packer player of the past?
So this week's Packers player of the past is Czesław Bolesław Marcol.
That's easy for you to say.
Gesundheit.
Chester Marcol, the Polish prince. Chester Marcol was born in 1949 in Opole, Poland. He, at age 14, emigrated with his mother and his three siblings to the United States. So at age 14, he leaves the country where he grew up in, goes to a country where he knows nothing of the language at all. He stayed on a farm with his grandparents. He went to high school in Michigan and was, by all accounts, miserable in high school until one day in the gym class, they decided to play soccer. And Chester got the chance at a penalty kick and blasted the ball so hard that the gym teacher took notice. So I should note that Chester Marcol was a player who was very athletic. In Poland, actually, he was on the national team as a junior, as a goalkeeper. So he certainly had physical skills, and that physical skill included booting the ball really hard. The gym teacher was clearly intrigued by this level of physical skill, and the next day decided to bring him out and try to kick footballs. Chester didn't even know what footballs were. He was only vaguely aware of the game. He thought they were rugby balls. The gym teacher put the balls on a tee, and he proceeded to kick field goals of 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards, and 55 yards as a high school student who had never kicked a football before in his life.
Okay.
College recruiting was not the same back then as it is now. So he did not have any college offers, but his gym teacher knew somebody at Hinsdale College, and they had a handshake agreement that said, okay, you can join the football team at Hinsdale College. He proceeded to be NAIA All-American all 4 years of college. He set a record in college for a 62-yard field goal. At the time, the NFL record field goal was only 56 yards, so he had a longer field goal than the NFL record.
Wow.
The Packers, in looking into the 1972 draft, had an inside source, and specifically Lyle Blackburn, who was then a scout for the Packers, but had been a Packers coach during the 50s when they made all those great drafts, told the Packers that they definitely should be picking this guy. And so the Packers drafted a kicker, Chester Marcol, in the second round as the number 34 overall pick. They notably also had Willie Buchanan in that draft. And that 1972 team didn't look like it had a lot of potential. They had been 4-8-2 in the prior year under Dan Devine. That was Bart Starr's last year, but they did have one element of hope, which was John Brockton going over 1,000 yards. But things happened in the 1972 season. And in Chester Marcol's first game with the Packers, he kicked 4 field goals. In week 3, he kicked 3 field goals, including a game winner over Dallas as the Packers won 16-13. In week 4 against the Bears, he kicked a game-winning field goal into a 30-mile-an-hour win in order to beat the Bears. And in week 9, he also beat the Bears with 3 field goals, including a 51-yarder in a 23-17 win. In 3 different games, he had 5 field goal attempts. And the Bears coach, Abe Gibson, said about Chester, "I'll tell you the difference between winning and losing. Chester Marcol, he beat us both games." Chester Marcol was considered to be a dominant force in the NFL in that year. The Packers ended up finishing 10-4. And in that year, Chester Marcol led the NFL with 128 points. He had 33 successful field goals, which is still a Packers record. He had 2 field goals over 50 yards and was perfect 29 of 29 on extra points. Willie Buchanan was also rookie that year. He was the NFC Defensive Rookie of the Year, but Chester Marcol was the NFC Overall Rookie of the Year. He was also first-team All-Pro, and he received 2 votes for the NFL MVP as a kicker. There are only 2 other kickers that have received MVP votes, Ray Guy in 1977 and Mark Mosley when he won the MVP in 1982.
Wow.
So great year for Chester Marcol in those 1972 Packers that again went 10-4. Unfortunately, that was an unsustainable record. The Packers quarterback, Scott Hunter, in 72, only threw 43% completion, 6 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. They had to kick a lot of field goals basically because they couldn't actually move the ball.
That was their offense, right?
And as it turns out, that continued in the following years, except without moving the ball as much. Packers 5-7-2 in 73. In 74, Chester Marcol was again All-Pro with 25 field goals. He again led the league in scoring. Packers quarterbacks that year, however, were a total of 5 touchdowns and 21 interceptions, and were 6-8 in Dan Devine's last year. So that's the situation in 1974. He's had 2 All-Pro years and 3 years in the pro. Unfortunately, in the 1975 season, at the start of Bart Starr's time with the team, he tore the muscle in the thigh of his kicking leg and missed the rest of the year. So he played in the opening game and that was it. And essentially for the rest of his career, he struggled with a combination of injuries and personal elements that contributed to his
personal elements. Yes. Neil, just skip ahead. Just skip ahead to the thing that we remember Chester Marcol for. Why in Bears Week?
I want to go back to 1979 first, because in the 1979 year, the Packers lost to the Bears both 6-3 and 15-14. If you're a Packers fan in the late 70s, you know that we stunk and the Bears were good. The Bears had Walter Payton, and in those 2 games in 1979, Walter Payton had over 100 yards rushing, and he had over 50 yards receiving in one of the games, over 100 yards rushing in both games, and we stunk. And so the Bears were like our season. We're sort of like the Minnesota Vikings with the Packers, that, you know, as long as we could beat the Bears, that was the only thing we really had to hope for as far as the season is concerned. So go to the 1980 season opener, playing Chicago in Lambeau Field. It was a slugfest. The game was 6-6 after the end of regulation. That is, there were 4 field goals in the game. The Packers had only 12 first downs, but on the other hand, they held Walter Payton to only 65 yards on 31 attempts. In addition, Mike Phipps threw 3 interceptions. So essentially, the Packers defense held them in the game. 6-6, we go into overtime. And in overtime, the Packers get the ball. Lynn Dickey throws to James Lofton on a 32-yard pass that set up a 35-yard field goal attempt that had the chance to win the game. This is a situation where I was actually at the game. I was in the stands on the sideline. And as a Packers fan who was used to us stinking, the thought that we could actually beat the Bears was an incredible thought. It's something that just like, wow, this is something that actually good can happen for the Packers. And again, 10 years old, we've had a lot of bad teams as far as I remember, as far as all of us remember.
Our entire lifetimes at that point.
This was a big deal. So The snap goes back to David Beverly, the holder. Chester Marcol kicks it. It is blocked by Alan Page, but the ball goes right back into Chester Marcol's arms. And in what must have been the slowest run in NFL history, Chester Marcol carried the ball 25 yards into the touchdown. It's affectionately known as the Kick Six, in which he kicked the ball to himself and scored the touchdown. Watching from the stands, watching on television, no matter where you watch it, even watching it again, it's something that is really one of the greatest Packers plays of all time, because we didn't have a lot to cheer for. And then this amazing thing happens that we beat the Bears.
Opening day.
And that following week, every schoolboy in the city of Green Bay spent every recess trying to recreate that play on the playground, because that's what we did. Oh, see that highlight? Let's make that happen. And that was a tough one to make happen, to get that ball to bounce right back to you. But you talk about the slowness of that run, Neil. Nobody caught him, though. He still made it. He still, and I think that the special teams are different today than they were then. So
the asshats would have allowed that for sure, but
25 yards probably being the maximum that would have happened. If it had been 26 yards, I think he would have gotten caught.
Yeah.
And then it would have been a different story there. But yeah, that was just such an incredible play. It's very iconic. It's very memorable in the history for Packer fans. And it certainly is a play that I think Chester Marcol has been asked about a lot, because it does become his most memorable spot, even though he had some great seasons early on, Neil. But we did find out, where you talk about personal elements, Chester Marcol admitted as much. He said a week prior, he had basically discovered cocaine, had tried cocaine for the first time. And he liked the smell of it so much that he decided that he needed to catch a bump of it at halftime of that game. So, there's not a lot going on for kickers. So I guess if you got to spice things up a little bit, you got to do what you got to do. But even, if he, I don't know, it worked for him. I'm not going to do an advertisement and say that's going to work for everybody. But
it worked for him that week. But
that week, yes,
Bart Starr was not happy, and he was indeed cut by the Packers only a month later, essentially because he, according to Bart Starr, because his kickoffs weren't going as far. But Chester Marcol is convinced it's because of his cocaine habits. So,
well, it makes you wonder how much was known behind the scenes. How much did everybody know was going on in the locker room, going on in personal lives? And what the accountability was at that time versus what it is today. So, and it's probably because of that it is different today than what it used to be. But still, it's one of those stories.
But it was also the 80s. I mean, the early 80s and cocaine in sports was a very different thing. So
so I've got a teaser for the upcoming history and for the also coming up for the Bears week. So yes, the Packers opening game in 1980, they beat the Bears 12-6. Unfortunately, the next time the Packers played the Bears,
don't even,
in 1980,
don't.
Well, it's so bad, it's historic. It's the largest margin of victory in this series for either team when the Bears beat the Packers 61-7.
The Packers did not recover. They did not convert that miraculous opening day victory into a great season. And specifically, that was one of the worst losses. I will say, though, although Chester Marcol's time in Green Bay had this glory in the final year, but ended with him being cut a month later, he is still the number 7 all-time Packers scorer with 521 total points. In context, though, Mason Crosby has 1,807 points, over 3 times as many as.
But he does not have those 33 field goals in a year. That's interesting.
He actually does. He actually is tied.
Okay.
He actually has tied the record of Chester Marcol. But the thing that Mason Crosby will never have is that Mason Crosby will never be in the National Polish American Sports Hall of Fame as Chester Marcol is.
Very good. And where is that located?
It is in Michigan.
All right.
I just became aware of it today, but it's certainly, given my ancestry, is something that I'm going to look at a little bit more. Do we want to watch the clip, or at least
sure?
try?
If you can make it work,
sure.
Let's take a look.
Go for it.
Let's hope he's got one more in him, because it'd be a big start for Green Bay to get away from the starting block 1-0, and it'd be really a lift for Bart Starr, who all week, around here has been carrying a bucket of water in one hand, a pail of sand in the other, putting out all these fires. I tell you what, wouldn't do my soul any damage either to see a victory right here at this stage. I've worked hard today. I don't know about you.
I'll tell you, if I was Neil Armstrong, I'd get a bucket of water and some sand myself, because there's some subject of criticism as to how he handled his team in this overtime. At least it's on somebody else's back for at least for a week if we can get this field goal.
All right, the situation is this. 9:07 to go in the overtime. The Packers with the ball, 4th and 10. Chester to try a 35-yard field goal, hash mark to the left. And the game writing on this right here. David Beverly will hold. It's 35 yards straight on, no wind as a problem. Beverly checks with Chester and says it's all right. Waits for the snap from center. Here comes the snap. Good snap. The kick is on the way block. The Bears block it. Chester picked it up. Chester's running. Chester's going to score. And the Packers win it. He won it by picking up a blocked field goal. And the Packers win the game. Holy cow!
That came directly back in his hands. He took off for his first touchdown ever.
Unbelievable. Let me tell you what happened. Chester kicked it. It was blocked by the Bears. The kick was low. Looked like Jim Osborne got it. The ball came right back into the hands of Chester. He peeled out to the left. He had blocking down the sideline. He followed the blocking into the end zone, and the Packers win the ball game 12-6. Holy cow.
What a football game, and what an ending. This will go down as one of those real strange endings, but it's a great day for Green Bay. The Bears are very dejected, and you can see why.
Max, let me tell you this. The Packers had gone 240 plus 6, 246 minutes without a touchdown until Chester ran it into the end zone.
Who would have thought it would have ended with the Chester Marcol running about 40 yards around left end for a touchdown?
Well, the Packers win it, folks. How do you like that, huh? 1-0 against the Chicago Bears. And now it's the Detroit Lions at County Stadium. And you think this crowd is not on the feet to applaud the Packers? And Max, it just relieves all kinds of pressure.
I can see it next week, starting at tailback Chester Marcol.
Well, we'll go over the scoring plays. They're all field goals. We'll do that in our post-game show, and we'll remind you that we will be back with you on Sunday from from County Stadium in Milwaukee. The Packers take on the Detroit Lions. Our thanks to Jay Irwin, who was our spotter today, to Tim Palm, our statistician, to Dick Page, our engineer. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. If you're a Packer fan, you are ecstatic right at the moment. The Packers win it 12-6. Stay tuned for the post-game show coming up next on the Green Bay Packer Radio Network.
Truly one of the greatest and most memorable plays in all of Packers history, and all the better because it came by beating the Bears.
You know, that could have and should have been the first Lambeau leap there, Neil. He was flying high enough. I don't know why he didn't just finish it off, get into the first row there. But it's nice that was the radio broadcast combined with the video replay for those fans of our podcast who are going to grab the audio only. That plays out pretty well for them, that they got the good radio broadcast, because radio, you know, certainly is more vibrant. It's a hot medium, more so than television.
Yeah, you get to express your extreme enthusiasm as a local broadcast announcer, and certainly Jim Irwin and Max McGee were consummate, the voices of my childhood right there.
Well, it was a season opener, Packers and Bears. So now we have the season home opener, Packers Bears. So it is the proverbial Bears week, and we are getting ready for the Chicago Bears coming into town. We'll talk about the game in a minute, but if you are coming into Green Bay or the area and you need something to do other than going to the Packer game on Sunday, want to let you know that there's a few things going on in and around the area. Oktoberfest. There is an Oktoberfest celebration going on at the Lorelei Inn in Green Bay. Our friend Dave and his restaurant there, he's got a nice outdoor celebration. He puts tents up in the parking lot, lots of live music, lots of beer, both Friday and Saturday nights. That's on Webster Avenue in Alloway. Go to the Lorelei Inn Friday, Saturday for Oktoberfest if you'd like. His competition Saturday night at Lambeau Field, I believe it's actually in the parking lot at Lambeau Field. The band Train is doing the kickoff opener, a free concert over at the Lambeau Field area. It starts at 5 p.m. I think there's got to be an opening act, and then Train will play a little bit later on then as well. Outside of the Green Bay area down here in Appleton, we have Irish Fest going on Saturday morning. And throughout the afternoon.
John, nobody's going to Appleton.
Oh, Neil, you got to get your drink on at Irish Fest in Appleton in the morning and make your way up to Oktoberfest at the Lorelei Saturday night. One other thing I'd like to put a pitch in for, Neil. Bay Beach is still open. It is open on the weekends, and the amusement park, part of the Green Bay Park system, is one of those treasures that we have in Green Bay. There is really nothing like Bay Beach in any other city in America. So if you get a chance, head over to Bay Beach, ride the Zip and Pippin, and anything else that happens to be open this weekend, because it's a blast, right? It is.
Are the
very
tickets
nice.
still a quarter a piece, or did they?
I believe they are. I think I didn't go this year. I don't know if inflation hit, but I know the roller coaster is $1, so you got to buy either the special $1 ticket or four quarter tickets.
Very
But
good.
it's still a very reasonable price to be able to walk in, park for free, walk up and pay $1 to ride a roller coaster for 2 minutes. Come on, where are you going to do that? So it's a very interesting place. It's nice. There's a lot of things around Bay Beach, and certainly if you are in Green Bay, enjoy your time, have fun at the Packer game. And if you go to the Packer game and you want to tailgate, some things you might need to know. Neil knows I love talking about tailgating. The big tailgating spot at Lambeau Field is Lot 1. Lot 1 is on the east side of the stadium between the Oneida Gate steps and the Don Hudson Center, and that is completely closed right now. It is totally under construction. There is nowhere to go. It is all fenced up. You cannot go through it at all. You got to go around it. Makes things a little bit trickier getting into the building, but everywhere else, Lot 2 and all the other parking lots are open. The other venues within the area, there's a new tailgate party going on in what's called the Bart Star Plaza by the Rush Center. That's being put on by 97.3 The Game. They are the iHeart Radio that now has the Packer broadcast. They took it over from WTMJ. So they've got a tailgate party going on over there. And you can always head over to get a shot ski, some Grandma Lambeau's apple pie shots. We have moved from Lot 1 to Lot 9. So the big tailgate party that Scott throws in pregame is in Lot 9. It's on the south side of the stadium. So if you're facing the Fleet Farm Gate and the South Gate, I know the South Gate has a sponsor this year. I don't remember the name of it, but if you're looking at that south side of the stadium and you're going to be right there in Lot 9, you can't miss us. Look for the smiley flag, look for the loud music, look for the shot ski. Come on by.
Look for the loud music.
Loud music. Yep. Look for it. Look for loud music, Jeff. Exactly. It is a free tailgate party. It is open to everybody. We like it when the visiting fans come in because we want Lambeau Field to be an experience for everyone. So if you're, in fact, a guy that I work with lives in Milwaukee as a Bears fan, he is making his first trek to Lambeau Field on Sunday. Yep, he's going to go to the Packer Bear game, so we're going to show him a good time, even though he'll be wearing his Bears gear. That's okay. We'll have a good time then as well because we like it. Yeah, we'll play the Bears still suck once or twice or three times, but it's in good fun because it is a good rivalry. And Jeff, talking about that great rivalry gets us to our history report. I know I always like to say that you've got a bedtime story for us, but this really is probably more hopefully going to pump us up. And the good thing about this, Jeff, is you've discovered the dope sheet as well. It certainly has come in handy.
It certainly has. So I could talk for an extended period of time. I will try to keep it the history because there is so much history. I mean, this is the history of the NFL with these two teams. So the first meeting was November 27th, 1921. The Chicago Staleys beat the Green Bay Packers 20-0. So since then, they have played almost every single year. There's been 2 years where they didn't play. 1922, they weren't scheduled. And 1982, they didn't play due to the players' strike. So we talked a little bit about the all-time wins in the NFL regular season. And the Packers, we thought maybe this would be the game. They might overtake them. That's not going to happen, obviously. It's fascinating. It's been a extremes where one team is dominated for literally decades, and then it swings back and forth and back and forth. And that's part of the rivalry. And this early on in Green Bay, the Bear weekend, when they would come up, was always a huge revenue generator for the Packers as well, because obviously it seems like they're far away. I don't know. But literally you can be in downtown Chicago and be back in Green Bay in like 3.5 hours. It's really weird. It's like a different world being from going to Chicago, coming to Green Bay, but it's such a huge draw and there's so much history. So getting back to football. So from 1921 to 1929, the Bears led the series in wins. Okay. Then in 1930, the series was tied. Then the Packers led the series for the next 2 years, 31 and 32. Then the Bears led the all-time series from 1933 to 2015. Okay. So it's just like, oh my, seriously. So the series was tied in 2016 and we've led since then. So there's been 2 occasions where the Bears have led the series by 24 games. Those 2 years were 1960 and 1992.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Two pretty consequential years.
Yes, exactly. Well, and that's really important because it's, again, these major swings. So just going through this, I'm like, okay, I've lived this, whatever, but I still couldn't believe it. So kind of broke it down by decades. All right. So the Bears, the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s, and 80s. The Packers, 60s, 90s, the aughts, the 20 teens, and the last 2 years, Packers are 4-0. So again, it comes down to this decade piece. So in the 1940s and the 1950s, the Bears against the Packers were 39-2. That's not too bad. That's why that swung so far towards the Bears. Since 1990, the Packers against the Bears are 46-19. So they've made up the ground, obviously. So the all-time series, this will be the 205th game played. So the Packers now lead, as I've mentioned, 103 games. It's 193 wins, 95 losses, and 6 ties. And that does include the 2 playoff games as well, where they're 1-1. So
I'm wearing an homage to one of those playoff games right now with my Storks jersey.
Nice. So a couple other interesting factoids here. And in 2020, by reaching 100 wins over the Bears, that's when the Packers hit that milestone, they became the first franchise to win 100 games against 2 franchises, the Bears and the Lions. Yep. And then in 2011, the Packers were only the second franchise in NFL history to defeat the same opponent 4 times in a calendar year. So that was when they won the last game of the 2010 season, the playoff game, and then the next 2 regular season games in 2011. So there was another, the Raiders over the Broncos in 94. So again, they weren't the first team, they were the second team. A couple other kind of interesting things about this rivalry. So as we know, the Packers played from 1932 to 1994 in Milwaukee, okay, at County Stadium. There was only 1 game played at County Stadium between the Packers and the Bears.
Oh, wow.
So, and that was in 1974, kind of right in the, almost in the middle. So, and I think it was a revenue generator, again, up to Green Bay, Bears fans, Packers. This was the rivalry. Again, they started in 1921. In 1961, the Packers swept the Bears for the first time since 1935. So kind of a little drought there. So the longest winning streak by the Bears is 8 games. And what's interesting about that is that was from 1985 to 1988. So that's reason. I mean, that's obviously
we remember them.
8 straight
or forgotten
there.
them,
So,
as it were.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Packers actually they're currently on a 6-game winning streak against the Bears. And as Aaron Rodgers told the world last year when he scored the touchdown, that he owns the Bears, and he's not wrong. I mean, the stats are just incredible over these last in his career against the Bears. I mean, it's just they've been almost dominant. So what does that mean for this week? Will it continue to be, I mean, dominant? You know, that's the thing, right? Oh, you know, and then all of a sudden, are they going to just go out and
Well, that's the beauty of a rivalry game, right? I mean, that's why the game in 1980 with the Chester Marcol Kick Six was such a miracle, right? It's the Bears were clearly the better team that year, and yet it's a rivalry game. We pulled it off, and it's one of the greatest Packers games ever.
Yeah. So the Packers have won 12 of the last 14 meetings against the Bears at Lambeau Field. Obviously, we know that that's Rodgers as a quarterback. They've outscored Chicago 406 to 215 in those last 14 home games, scoring 20 plus points in 12 of those contests. Here's the other interesting thing. Well, there's a lot of interesting things, but under LaFleur, the Packers have turned the ball over exactly one time against the Bears. Wow. Against 12. So the turnover differential is plus 12. They've got 13 takeaways and they've only turned it over once. So all things point, even the asshat. The reason why the last game they played against the Bears at Lambeau was that 45-point game that we should have, the asshats. Remember, that was the issue with the returns and so again, if our lovely asshats don't give up a touchdown and they can I don't know. We'll see. But it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. History says that anything does happen. Aaron Rodgers tied the NFL record a number of years back with 6 touchdowns in the first half against the Bears. So he's been knocked out of a game with the Bears as well. So hopefully that won't happen. And hopefully he will go back to Aaron Rodgers owning the Bears.
I can specifically remember that 8-game winning streak, 85 to 88. And then even after that, paying attention to that Packers Bears overall record. As you said, 92 is when things kind of started to change. And even I think would have been in college, probably around the age 20 or so, looking at those numbers and just trying to calculate how long is it going to take for Green Bay to
catch
have
up.
the favor in there. I said, geez, I'm going to be 50 years old. And here we are.
Way to go, Nostradamus. Way to go.
It actually happened at 45, which is nice. But yeah, it's certainly that it's been a lot more fun being a Packers fan the past 30 years than it was the 20 years prior to that. So especially in the Packer Bears rivalry, Jeff, you mentioned that devastating second game of the 1980 season, the 61-7. That's one of those things that traumatizes a 10-year-old child. I don't think I've ever lived that down. I don't feel that outside of the NFC Championship game, I don't feel that there's ever been proper retribution for that game. Well, but that's being a fan. That's like, man, that no matter what happens, that game is always going to bug me.
Yeah, it's interesting though that the 70s and the 80s actually weren't that lopsided in terms of the series. I mean, as I mentioned, in the 40s and 50s, it was absolutely no contest. But throughout the 70s, in the 20 games that the Packers and the Bears played, the Bears only have a 11-9 win advantage. And in the 80s, they have an 11-7 win advantage. Again, that's with an 8-win streak in there. So it's actually not as horrifically bad. And then the Packers in the 90s, that's again, they forged ahead 13-7. And then in the 2000s, the aughts, the Packers are 12-8 against the Bears. But in the 2010s, 17-4. And again, the undefeated in the over the last 2 years. So hopefully that will continue.
I think that is one thing we forget as Packers fans is although we have negative memories of the early 80s because we didn't win a whole lot as far as, being a team that made the playoffs. We had a bunch of 8-8 years. And while if you have 8-8 years, there's probably going to be splits with division rivals. I want to go back to a statistic that we talked about last week, which is the total number of regular season wins for the Bears. So the Bears won last week. We lost. So now the Bears have a 2-game lead of 784 to 782 over the Packers for regular season wins. But that seems like a very Bears-like thing to only focus on the regular season wins and not the postseason wins, because the Bears have 17 postseason wins. The Packers have 36. And if we consider total NFL wins, the Packers have a comfortable lead over the Bears at 818 over 801. And I think that as Packer fans, we care about the postseason. So let's not forget it.
Yeah, that's and we lead in championships, right? 13-9. We're going to get in, we can go into that conversation as well.
But the Bears still suck in the end. The Bears still suck.
Absolutely. And certainly in the modern era of the Super Bowl, the Bears have exactly won. What do you think, John?
I was looking for that quote from Bart Starr, and I can't find it on what he said to Bears coach Neil Armstrong after that 61-7. It wasn't pleasant. I remember that. But
some profanity, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, but Starr was a classy guy. I don't know if it was profanity as much as a shame on you kind of thing, because the Bears continued to blitz all the way through the end of that game. You mentioned the Bears won Super Bowl. They hang on to that, though, right, Neil? I mean, what you just said that you saw a kid with a Super Bowl.
I was on campus
shirt?
this week. I was on campus this week, or just today, and yes, 1 p.m, there's a 20-year-old guy wearing a Bears Super Bowl 20 Bears over the Patriots Super Bowl 20 shirt around campus. And it's like,
wow,
you weren't even close to born when that.
I mean, did it look that old, or did he just buy? I mean, was it vintage, or was it just screen printed?
It could have been something that he got from his dad or mom, or it could have been something that he bought to make look older. But it definitely didn't look like modern graphics. Let's just say that.
Okay, all
sure.
Right.
So, and they have been to the Super Bowl since then. They did lose to the Colts, but they have been there since then. So they have that going for them. They're 1-1. It's better than the Lions.
Nice. Yeah.
Better than the Vikings 0-4 record. Yeah.
Well, why don't we talk about the game itself, right? So our previews and our thoughts as far as the game is concerned. So, right, we're in a situation where the Bears are 1-0 and we're 0-1, and at some level that's a little bit disconcerting for the Bears to be above us as far as the standings are concerned. And the Bears had a comeback victory over San Francisco, the team that beat us in the playoffs last year. So this seems like doubly bad that a team that beat the Packers in the playoffs is a team that was beaten by the Bears in week 1 of the season. And on top of it, we've got some rivalry elements with Luke Getsy being the offensive coordinator down in Chicago. On the other hand, I would call the Bears offense in week 1 fairly offensive, despite Justin Fields having a fourth quarter comeback. He was only 8 of 17 for 121 yards, 2 touchdowns, a long pass, 51-yard touchdown pass, and 1 to EQ for 18 yards, but 1 interception. But 8 of 17 for 121, that, even considering the conditions, is wildly unimpressive. And you think, wow, they're going to be able to grind out yards. They had 99 yards rushing for a 2.7 yards per attempt average. So their offense wasn't good. And also, it's not just that the conditions made everything impossible. Their defense wasn't good either. San Francisco gained 331 yards to the Bears 204 yards. So San Francisco was on paper a much better team. The Bears were 5 of 14 on third downs. They only had 3.6 yards per play. The difference in the end was that San Francisco committed 12 penalties for 99 yards.
Awful.
The Bears only committed 3. And so does this Bears team scare me because they beat San Francisco? I don't think so. And I especially don't think so, given it's a home opener at Lambeau in prime time. I think we win this game easily.
Well, and the odds makers right now, Green Bay is favored 9.5 points on this matchup. Yeah. 9.5 is the early odds on this one.
Take the under.
So that's right. That's Lambeau Field under the lights. And even after that week 1 loss and the Bears, showing some mettle in week 1, it could be raining Sunday as well. So hopefully our field drains a little bit better than Soldier Field does. That was ridiculous.
Well, they also had many inches of rain. That was my thought too. But then it really was a monsoon. And we've also heard players can really be upset about the field conditions and then just dump 3 inches of rain on, make it just that much worse. But I thought there'd be some kind of drainage or something. And
you talk about field conditions, though. I'm still bitter about Eddie Lee Ivory going out with a knee injury against the Bears at Soldier Field in 1979.
That shitty artificial turf. Yeah.
The Bears never have an excuse for having terrible turf. And yes, we came back for our 1978 season We should have been in the playoffs. We tied for the division lead. And then our star running back goes down
First
against the
game.
Bears on the crappy turf of, it's crappy is overstating the quality. So
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bears still suck. Their stadium still sucks. Thankfully, we're playing in Lambeau.
So Neil, you've got a Packers win for Sunday. Do you remember what you get down for your confidence points on that one?
I don't know the exact number, but it's really high. I think very highly of the Packers winning at home in the home opener against a Bears team that is, in the end, not that good.
All right. I put it as a win. I got 12 points on this one out of 17. Jeff, do you remember what you got?
I don't. I was just looking for it here. No, it's a pretty high confidence as for a win.
All right.
And
So,
I would say I am actually also going to go the over as far as the score line is concerned. I think 9 points, yes, that's a huge line as far as the score is concerned. I just think the Packers are going to have a game where they put things together, and Justin Fields is Justin Fields.
So Neil's saying a blowout. The Packers will win by more than 9.5. Neil is saying, all right.
Yeah. So the Packers have scored 40 plus points in each of the last 2 meetings against the Bears at Lambeau. And this is the only time doing so versus Chicago in the series history. So let's make it 3. Let's string another, let's hang 40 plus on them. Our defense, in theory, will be good. A little more, well, they held the Vikings if they could have covered that guy named Jefferson, I think.
Yeah.
The score would have been less. So, yeah, I think
the Bears don't have a Justin Jefferson.
That's very true. They don't even have a Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. Well, they have a Justin Fields, and they're buying into it. So we'll see how he does. All right. So as confident as we were in a Packers loss in week 1, we are confident in a Packers win in week 2. We'll see how it fares, and we'll talk all about it next week when we come back. Guys, anything else for the greater good before we get out of here?
Hey, if you're headed to Green Bay this weekend, have a great time. Stop by the Lorelei, enjoy the game. Hopefully the weather, it won't be raining, but nonetheless, enjoy home opener Packer weekend.
No matter which team is doing well or doing poorly, if they're both doing well, both doing poorly, Packers-Bears is always a special week. And so let's enjoy the Packers-Bears rivalry, and hopefully let's see a really dominant Packers game on Sunday night.
All right, and let's see you tailgating with us in lot 9. If you're wearing your Bart Starr jersey, I'll be wearing my Jim Ringo jersey. We'll get a picture together from the backside with the nameplates. We'll be Ringo Starr, dun-dun-dun, and we'll have some fun on Sunday. You okay, Jeff?
Wow, I didn't see that one coming.
Oh, Jeff, come on, that's the reason I bought the jersey. All right,
fantastic.
You can get more information on the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat on Twitter and on Facebook at the GBC podcast Green Bay Chat. We'll also post some information about Oktoberfest and tailgating. We'll get all that up on the Twitter page as things come up when the show gets posted. As always, may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.